That Kinsey's books triggered back in the 50s when people were just so amazed to learn about, oh my God, people think of weird, sexy things or do weird, sexy things like we do. I mean, it's amazing when you think of the impact that these were like bestsellers flying off the shelves, and there was nothing sexy about these books. They were boring tables and charts and graphs and just the results of their data, but it showed people like, this percentage of people reported having oral sex in the past. And people thought, we thought we were the only weird ones that did that.
Right.
Or premarital sex. Remember that stat from like the 1950s that 81% of people had premarital sex? And everybody in the 80s and 90s was like, oh, no, nobody did that.
Right,
in the
exactly.
50s.
We have this like, nostalgic way of looking at the good old days.
Yeah. So this also kinds of, sheds light on the kinds of research that normalizes and helps people who, for a lot of reasons we talk about on this show, grow up with messages of shame and guilt and feeling like there's something wrong with their sexuality. Or
just
that
because
kinky is
it's
abnormal.
Not the quote typical scripted what it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. And that deviation is not deviance. I think that was
that's
a quote from Ian Kerner about Michael's book. That we've been saying that for years. Deviation is a mathematical concept, right? Deviation from the norm, the standard deviation.
Right. Even normal is a statistical value.
In the English language, these words get loaded like deviant, like pervert.
Right.
Like there's something abnormal about being a statistical outlier.
Sure. And, and that alone is, a lot of people have asked us over the years, too, and we look at a lot of the evolution of terms and expressions, in particular, something like when trans people started to refer to cis people.
Cisgendered.
Right? Yeah. And I think that is in reaction to what you were just talking about, that implication that if you don't do it the way I do it, if you're not like me, if you're not normal, then you're not normal. And this kind of, it's like, no, it's, our normal may be different than your normal.
Right.
Right. And I think that sort of permission giving, that, like you said, normalizing deviations from what is considered typical sexual expression.
Yeah. That's why new parents, whenever possible, of course, it's a luxury for some people, but new parents need a break. They need to remember their lovers, and their parenthood is proof of that. And instead of falling right into mommy and daddy, which tend to be unsexy roles,
right?
Especially if there's exhaustion
they
from
de-eroticize.
Poopy diapers and getting puked on all day and being exhausted. And if there's more than one kid, then sometimes the last thing people feel like is sexual intercourse, but they need to remember that the closeness and the connection is medication for all that stress and anxiety. And
absolutely.
That they need to stay. They don't start getting resentful against each other because of the burden of parenting.
Right.
It's another kick in the head. We can have someone on to talk about this. Is a whole other area of sex therapy that's heartbreaking. But any kind of technology-assisted reproduction, in vitro fertilization, couples where their entire reason for being is having a baby, that's all they want. Sometimes it takes years and tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. They finally succeed. Then sometimes those weird fertility drugs make women's ovaries like Jiffy Pop popcorn, and they get like twins and triplets and quadruplets. They finally succeed and have the kids they were living and ready to die for, and within a year the marriage is done.
Right.
Can't survive the stress of a very unsexy process.
Well, and part of it is because, again, we don't talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
We don't have anything that people can turn to help them make that transition. Because, again, if you think about it, it's lover, parent, then parent-lover. And there's nothing that helps people adapt these, to these new roles and these new identities and grow and evolve. So people end up getting stuck and frustrated and angry and resentful.
It's the only time I've ever heard guys complain about being treated like a sex object or a sperm donor. And hearing this, like, how sexy is it? Like, I'm ovulating, get in here now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I'm so in the mood.
Right.
But it's tragic. It's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really can be. So, I mean, this is such, and again, it's so ironic that the whole area of conversation and experience around pregnancy is so devoid of sex and eroticism.
And sexiness.
Yeah.
That is truly an ultimate irony.
Yeah.
We know that erections are cyclical. Certainly during the night when we sleep,
right.
on average, every 90 minutes,
right.
there's a testosterone, erection in our sleep. Whether we wake up or not, whether we have sexy thoughts when we wake up or not. One thing we should get out of the way right out of the gate is the long, mysterious morning wood phenomenon.
Right. Well, I want to put that. We can even, and maybe even let's hold off on it just a little bit. Let's put it out there and see if anybody wants to call in. If anybody would have, some ideas of why is it that men wake up with morning wood? Why do we wake up with erections? Right? And let me just also put this out for my the students in my sexuality class. The secret word is nocturnal erection.
Oh.
All right. So why do we have them? And you're right. A lot of people don't realize that we're cyclical. It's easy to look at women and women's physiology in terms of cycles, but people don't realize that men are also cyclical. Right?
Well, not monthly, but
no,
daily.
but we have different cycles
in a 24-hour period.
Well, sure. I mean, if we're
cyclical.
watching a guy throughout sleeping, and again, people don't necessarily realize that if you fall asleep at midnight and you wake up at 8 a.m., you did not sleep for 8 hours. Right? We sleep in these cycles. We go in and out of our sleep cycles, starting with awake, stage 1, stage 2,
I mean,
stage 3.
it's still asleep.
Well,
we're cycling through different levels of consciousness and things and dreaming.
We're waking up every hour to hour and a half.
Erection thing is a testosterone thing.
Well, but again, it's also related to these cycles. Because after a dream state, after a period of REM sleep, and in spite of the fact that sometimes we seem like we're having this dream all night,
yeah, right.
It's only 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah,
right?
It's seconds even.
Exactly, that we're in that state. And then we cycle back out. After every REM state, we have a surge of testosterone. So if you're watching a guy, and this is also how we kind of look at and try to diagnose the physical aspect of erection difficulty.
Erectile dysfunction.
Right.
They put guys to sleep with these little Velcro straps around, and if the Velcro doesn't snap...
Or the roll of postage stamp thing.
You're right. No, that's
the
going
home
back
version.
a ways. Yeah. If the stamps don't break, you didn't get an erection when you slept.
But after every dream state, we have this surge of testosterone, which means if we're watching a guy cycle through his sleep every 60 to 90 minutes, he will have an erection.
Yeah, like these sleep studies and stuff like that. Yeah, I just remembered years and years and years, like 20 years ago, when I was first doing sex ed and going to a conference and hearing, I think it was that author. He's still writing, I think, on my Psychology Today, Michael Castleman.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Who was talking about that during the waking state, guys average 5 testosterone surges during a day. And then he commented that Buddhist monks pray 5 times a day, and he wondered if there was some connection there, right? Some coincidence that 5 times a day of going, please
keep it down.
So yeah, we're wired. There's a certain plumbing. It's a unique organ, pun intended. I don't know where this old nugget came from, but, this idea of it being a multi-purpose tool that procreates and urinates and recreates. All in the same, right? Like a Swiss Army knife, but with one flip.
That's right.
Women's urinary function and reproductive function, obviously, neighborly, but separated, right? There's the urethra that doesn't have the purpose in women as it does in men. In fact, most men don't really realize, unless you took a sex ed class or something like that, that right in the middle of our prostate gland, there's like a Y joint from where the pee is coming down from our bladder and semen is coming up our vas deferens, and they can't be coming down the urethra
and actually, that's
at
right
the
where
same
the
time.
urethra meets, right?
Right. They can't possibly, a guy cannot urinate in a genital. There's no practice. There's no weird kink thing.
It's not a skill
that a guy could learn how to urinate and ejaculate simultaneously
No.
because there's a gate of some form where, you know, and that's why a lot of guys, when they wake up with a morning erection and they have a full bladder, and guys think the full bladder somehow pushes some button that causes the erection.
One has nothing to do with the other.
Right. They're just co-incident. So you wake up in the morning like everybody wakes up in the morning. Our kidneys have been filtering our blood and filling our bladder with urine. The stretch receptors in the bladder tell our brain it's time to go pee. And we get up and go to the bathroom, but down there thinks it's sexy time. And so the brain has to send like an override to flip the gate.
That's right. That's the frustrating part for a lot of guys.
No, it's not sexy time. You have to pee now.
That's right.
So most guys know from like maybe standing a step or two back from the toilet and learning. We learned this from a young age, how to kind of work the angle, you know, the arc into the toilet, and then you move closer to the toilet. Most of the time that erection goes down, you know, during the urination. Sometimes it doesn't. And then again, kinky guys who are into like water sports and golden showers and things like that can probably learn much more control about that sex and urination thing, but not at the same time.
But I think it's also more rare that a guy can even maintain an erection while he's urinating because, again, part of our simple plumbing. Again, because it's sort of that all-purpose tool, it has to, the body has to compartmentalize its function pretty efficiently. So like you were saying, when we have the urinary urgency, then there's that valve by that Y joint shuts off the sort of vas deferens part of it so that semen that may be in the pipes is not going to come out, and that's bladder time. Now, if it is aroused, if there is an erection, that joint will close off, or that valve will close off and prevent the bladder entree. Now, because we have that one tube, that's also why we have to have an extra little plumbing factor going on here, which is also why when a guy does start to become aroused, he starts to get an erection, there is that pre-ejaculatory fluid.
Right.
No. All right, I won't call it
we'll
just
call
in
it
case.
pre-ejaculatory fluid.
That is a very important part of our sexual and reproductive function. All right? It's kind of our rotor-rooter system.
Yeah. It prepares, it bathes the urethra, it adjusts the pH, it gets rid of any remaining urine that might be in there.
Exactly, those crystals, uric acid crystals.
Paves the way for the sperm that might be coming.
Right, so it lubricates the urethra and it balances the pH, neutralizes that uric acid that is going to be in there, which can damage sperm. So that's kind of that extra plumbing thing. So that's what that really is.